Welcome to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast, where we are empowering youth female athletes to play and live confidently. My name is Shay Haddow, and each week I will bring you new episodes to teach you the strategies and tools that you need in order to live a confident, empowered life both on and off the playing field. Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back to another weekly chat with me and Erica, Shay, of course. So today Erica asked me, what do you want to chat about today? And there's something that's been going on. Obviously, it's always going on, but it's really been talked about a lot in my Facebook community. And that is the effect that coaches play in a player's confidence development and mental development. So obviously, Erica, you and I were talking about, I'll talk a little bit more about the mental side, and then you can kind of bring in the physical side of things. But first, before we get into that, I want to know your experience with coaches and how they affected your mental development. And you can get into how they affected physical development as well, but I just kind of want to hear your story first before we get into the stuff.
Sure. Well, I think I have a very different story than many. I am very lucky to say I never had a coach who brought me down or, who I was afraid of or afraid of making mistakes or who I didn't like. I had a very positive experience, and just some of the things they said to me during practice were comments where they made it known that they believed in me. And for me as a middle school and high school girl, that was huge. And I think the role of the coach is for them to be the ones who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself sometimes. Yeah. And that was big in my career. And I remember I had a female coach in high school when I played on the top club team in Maryland, and I was getting recruited and going through that whole process. And she was the one who was telling me to reach high. And we've discussed this, aiming for high goals. You don't always have to follow the be realistic mindset. Mm-hmm. And she really pushed me to get out of my comfort zone and see what I was capable of. And if it didn't work out, I knew I would land somewhere amazing. So just having her to believe in me and to just get more out of me and be hey, I know you're capable of this and your work ethic's incredible. And she just reminded me of all of my strengths. That was just so powerful. And it allowed me to learn how to talk myself up too, and to hype myself up, because she showed me how powerful that self-talk is, and just having that belief in yourself that you can do it.
That's so important. So like I've been talking about this a lot, on, in my group and stuff, where in order to have this unshakable confidence that I talk about, there's the internal environment. So your own self-talk, your mindset, that kind of stuff. And then there's the external environment, which, consists of coaches, parents, teammates, friends, all of that. Right. And if you have a strong internal environment, but you have coaches that are tearing you down, it makes it really hard to play with confidence, right? Or if you have teammates or parents that are creating this environment for you where it's hard to be confident, that makes it really tough, you're swimming upstream, right? So in order to have unshakable confidence, you need to have both. And not saying that you can't still be confident with some negativity going on outside of you, because that will happen. But coaches play such a huge role in this. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because with me in my youth career, I had absolutely amazing coaches. They were amazing people and I love them, but there were a lot of times where I know their intentions were good, but where my confidence was torn down by them. And I even had a conversation with my coach recently, and he was like, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you were struggling so much. I wish I would have, been more aware of what you were going through, because I was just going through my injury. And so that's the thing, is they were amazing coaches, but they didn't always help my confidence. And there's so many conversations I have with parents and with players where it's my daughter's coach is tearing her down. my daughter's coach is making her believe that she's not good enough. My daughter's coach is just completely destroying her mentally and emotionally. And that kills me because I know that there's so many amazing coaches out there. And if they're, and the coaches that listen to our stuff, like you would probably agree, they're the coaches that care. They're the coaches that are really trying. But I really wanted to get into like what coaches can do to really, especially with female athletes, what coaches can do to help cultivate confidence in their players. And one of the biggest things is to not just tell them that it's okay to make mistakes, but show them that it's okay to make mistakes. Like not only show them it's okay, but show them and like encourage them to make mistakes. Because that's was the biggest thing for me, and the biggest thing the girls I work with is that they don't want to make mistakes because they don't want to upset their coaches or they don't want to get yelled at. Like, do you see that with the players that you work with as well, as far as, you know, the fear of making mistakes because of how the coach portrays making mistakes?
Yeah, it's usually the coaches who just make a comment every time a
Yeah,
mistake is made, and it's
right.
like, wait a minute, everyone out on this field is human, and they're gonna make hundreds of mistakes. I don't care what level you're at, whether you're ECNL rec or you play in the pros, you're always gonna make mistakes. I mean, we saw in the Euro, three people missed
Yeah,
20 kicks at the highest level, but
right.
um, I think like coaches just need to know when to address the mistake. Like if it's
Mm,
something that is just like an error that like keeps happening over and over again, like maybe it's like a big defensive error that's like a game changing thing, then yes, address that. But if it's like a player, you know, like accidentally like losing balance or shanking a shot, or I don't know, making like being a step behind on a run, like sometimes you don't always have to address it. And I like to ask people like, and kind of make the analogy with like, you know, who are you dating? It's like, are you always going to call them out every time they do something wrong? They wouldn't want to be with you. You
right.
know, like sometimes you just have to let them figure it out. And most of the time, players know when they messed up.
Yeah, right.
They
I
know,
love,
they know.
yeah. No,
But
I
I think
love
if
that.
it's a make or break thing that keeps happening, that's like very damaging to the collective, then you
Yep.
need to address it in a way that's like, hey, here's where the breakdown was. And then be curious instead of criticizing. How can we
Yeah,
improve? Don't be like, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's the same thing. Like you don't want to do that to your partner.
right.
Like no one wants that done to them. So I think the curiosity and let them discover why they made the mistake and what they can do is going to be much more powerful for a girl.
Yeah, and it's not that you don't address the mistake, it's how you address the mistake. So is it just the criticism or is it actually feedback? And that's also kind of going to another point, but related, is like, I know for me at least, when I got pulled off and I made a mistake, but my coach didn't tell me what I did, that's when I would go down like this negative spiral of like, oh my gosh, what did I do? My coach hates me. And I would just like go crazy,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that drives girls crazy when they know they did something wrong and they got pulled out, but the coach doesn't give them feedback. Like just giving your player feedback as to why they're getting pulled out, even if it's just because they're tired or there needs to be a change. But if there's something that they can work on, like don't shy away from not telling them, because that almost can do damage as well. But like just be very aware about how you're giving them feedback and how you're responding to it, but give
Yeah.
them feedback, because then they will, you know, take it and they won't like go down this negative spiral of thoughts and like, you know, trying to guess what's wrong and what they did wrong. So that's important too, is like having the open line of communication where they know what they did wrong and they know how to fix it and you can provide that feedback for them.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that, and not being afraid to give that feedback, because your players can't read your mind, and then like you said, they're gonna go down this dark hole and be like, oh my gosh, I messed up here, and like is he or she judging me as a coach? So just it's important for coaches to just be very very clear with where the breakdown was and how to work on it, and also like when they're going over that mistake and going through it with the player, they should also just throw in like a strength or
Yeah.
a compliment. And this reminds me, when I was playing semi-pro, it was, we had a terrible first half against, I think it was like the Boston Breakers. This was like years ago. And our coach at halftime, like, he like ripped into us, but not in a way that was like, you guys suck or you guys are terrible. It was more like him being so passionate. He was like, I
Hmm.
know you guys are better than this. I know you guys are strong and you guys are way better than this team. Like, that's why I'm so frustrated. And the fact that he said that, I was like, whoa, this is pumping me up. Like, he's
Right.
disappointed because we're not playing how we usually play. And he knows we're good and he believes in us that we can do better.
Mm, I
And
love that.
that language and approach that just like lit a fire in me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just like the when you know that I guess it comes we could talk about ego a little bit, but
Yeah.
it really comes down to when you know that they truly care about you and they have that belief in you, then the player is more willing to like accept feedback and accept criticism. But when the player can sense that it's just like a coach wants to win for their own ego, which there's so many coaches like that, right? But like that's when it's like, oh, I'm going to close off and I'm not going to accept this feedback. So that's absolutely huge. And then the last point I want to make, and then I'll shut up and you can kind of talk about some of the physical stuff, is I posted like a survey on Twitter and in my Facebook group recently, kind of for coaches, asking them like how they deal with confidence and stuff with their team. And one of the questions was like, what's the hardest thing socially that your players that you see with your team? And this is hard for coaches because girls are complicated. Like girls put in a group, teenagers, like it's a complicated dynamic. And that's what I see as something that really affects girls' confidence is the cliques and the bullying and the mean girls and the comparison and like, and that kind of stuff. And I think that a lot of times, especially male coaches, like they don't want to deal with that stuff. So they just like let it happen. They just let the cliques happen. They just let the exclusion happen. They let that happen because they don't know how to deal with it. And I totally like, I don't blame you at all because it's like, it's not fun to deal with. But I think as a coach, it's really important that you set the tone for the culture of your team. You set the tone that this is an inclusive environment. There will be no cliques. There will be no bullying. We are a family and we are a team. Because when they feel that way, their confidence, like everything is related to the social aspect when it comes to girls teams. And when they feel excluded or when they feel like they don't belong, like that is a huge knock to a player's, especially a girl's confidence. So as a coach, it's really important to be aware of what's happening. Are there cliques? Do you see players getting left out? Do you see a couple girls like, you know, kind of being dominant while other girls are being submissive? Like kind of pay attention to the social dynamic of your team. And then one strategy that is really, I think, really effective that I've had some girls that I work with use is to have like team meetings, like not with a coach, like you can have team meetings with a coach, but encourage your players to have team meetings where it's just the players, where they can all just kind of talk about what's going well, what's not going well, where everyone has a voice. Because a lot of time with team meetings, it's either just the captains talking or it's just the coaches talking. And there isn't this sense of inclusion. It's like everybody needs to feel like they have a voice. Everyone needs to feel like they matter. Everyone needs to feel like they belong. And when you can kind of create that environment, like number one, the performance of your team is going to drastically improve. But number two, just the fun and enjoyment and learning and development will improve with that kind of dynamic and culture.
I'm really glad you touched on this part because not a lot of people think of it when it comes to player confidence and performance. But if a team is like so cliquey or like you said, players don't feel included in the group, then they're going to feel insecure and just not like they belong. And you're right. It is something that starts at the top. Like cliques don't just form just because, like it's a culture thing,
Yeah.
and that's something that the coach does have to just take a step back and just observe what's going on. And it could just be small things like the coach not playing favorites.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
Like that's a big one. And I think that really like isolates people, and that's what causes clicks, because then you have like the quote unquote favorite and better players like always like grouping up together, or he puts them on the same team every time they scrimmage. That's a huge issue, and that shouldn't be happening.
Totally.
And then another thing is like, if you're doing like partner or group drills within practice, like have like say, okay, partner up with someone that you never go with, that you don't know that well. Like I know, like when I run my summer camps, I don't let people from the same town ever partner up because they already know what's going on. So just those small things go a really long way as far as team chemistry, and like really like just making sure everyone becomes close friends.
Absolutely. And I know a coach is probably thinking, okay, how am I supposed to focus on this, focus on the tactical stuff, focus on the technical stuff like I'm only human? And I get that. Right. So one thing is, number one, you could hire me. I'll just throw that out there. Like
Definitely hire
I
Shay.
can work with your team, like hire me.
Yeah.
Number two is like, even if you were to dedicate one day a month where maybe you just go out and you go bowling with the team, or you do something off of the field where you can really get to know the players can just like get to know each other as people, or maybe it's a training session that where you do like fun team bonding activities, but find like one day a month to just focus on the team chemistry, you know, building a culture of belonging. Like that can be huge too.
Mm-hmm.
So Erica, what can coaches, unless you want to add more to that, but like, so there's obviously, right, there's technical, tactical, psychosocial, physical. So what can coaches do from your perspective as far as the physical development?
Yeah, before I get into that, I do want to say like a lot of coaches do have that mindset that you just mentioned, like, oh, well, I'm only human. I don't have time for any of this, you know, to add the mental or the physical training. And it's like, well, you always have to like make time to learn and grow. Like you're not just a one-dimensional coach. Like you have the ability to learn everything. And like, yes, it's going to take time. Like taking time to like learn how to manage finances or learn stocks, which are important life skills. You have to take the time to do this stuff.
Right.
And if you want to grow as a coach, then you also need to learn these other skill sets to serve your players. And I've in the past month I've been tweeting a lot, and people have been very triggered, and that's fine, but I've been tweeting a lot, like calling out high school coaches on their fitness tests. Like just stuff that's been done like years ago that isn't specific to the game or the energy system demands. And like I had to call people out, and a bunch of people messaged me and they're just like, oh, like, you know, that was such a rude tweet. And I was like, I'm not going to inspire change if I'm like nice about this. And they like were like, well, you need to like recognize that some of us are doing it right. And I was like, I recognize you guys all the time, and I always like am grateful for coaches who incorporate physical training into their practices. And it's so easy. And I work with a lot of like clubs and coach mentorship clients, and the first thing we start with is the warm up. Because that's the easiest thing that doesn't waste any time. And the warm-up can incorporate all physical qualities like sprint form through like skipping and marching, balancing, hip flexor mobility, and like so many things that if you're just doing that several times a week when players come to practice or go to games, you are already like helping them with improving performance and reducing injury. So that's the first thing that we start with. And I think that's where coaches feel the most confident to start. But then like when we are done nailing down the warm up, it's like, okay, now we're going to teach them jumping and landing. And coaches get really nervous about this because they don't feel like they're educated or competent enough with the female athlete and joint angles and how to land properly. But I just try to keep it as simple as possible for them and break everything down into 2 steps. And like I said, like Shay said, like hire me if you need help, but there's plenty of resources out there on how to teach female athletes these things so that they can be in better health, but also be faster and stronger on the field.
Yeah, and just thinking of that, right? Like I think the ultimate goal of a coach should be to develop the most well-rounded people,
Yeah.
right? And with that, it's not just the technical and the tactical. Like, yeah, that's a big part of it, but really thinking about how can I help these kids to number one become, you know, the best athletes. That requires the physical as well, it requires the mental as well, but more importantly, how can I help them to develop into great people, right? Like that's the ultimate goal. And so really looking at yourself, because it starts with you as the coach, right? It starts with you. And if you're not embodying all of these things yourself, then how are your players going to? And so taking a look at what you're doing personally with your life, but also looking at how are you coaching? Are you too one-sided with just the technical? Are you too one-sided with just the tactical? Like really taking inventory and asking yourself, how can I incorporate more of a well-rounded approach to my coaching? And I know you're only one person, but you have resources around you to help you to do that.
I love that. And it's really about not just building the player, but the human. And now that I think about it, it's like we look at all those aspects of the game, like tactical, technical, physical, and mental. And there's only two in there that are timeless.
Yes.
When soccer ends or when your sport ends, it's the physical and the mental that you need.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's something to think about. And it's like you want the best for your players on the field, but it's like, what other legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to give them the mental tools to be confident later in life, to set boundaries, to do these daily habits that Shay always talks about, or to build strong muscles so that they stay healthy? It's just like those two things are timeless for me, but
Oh,
also
God. Yeah.
biased.
No, I mean, like when you started to say that, I was like, oh my gosh, like I know where she's going with this.
Isn't that
And
crazy though? I
so
didn't even
true.
really think about it till this conversation.
Yeah. The technical, like I don't care about the technical anymore. I don't care about the tactical anymore. Has that helped me in my life? Helped me on the field? Doesn't help me in my life.
Yeah.
But the physical, your mind and your body is what you will be live with for the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
if you can develop players, and if that's the only thing you get out of this conversation, then that's amazing. To just know that the physical and the mental, that is where you will really leave an impact and a legacy on your players.
I feel we could have just done that 2 minutes of the conversation.
Hey, we had to work it out to like get to that.
Yeah. You know, the technical and the tactical are great, but you know, if you're playing like co-ed and adult, like you're going to have those naturally, you know, like it's not going to be that serious. So the physical and the mental, like Shay said, is going to take you really far with your career, your health and your lifestyle, your relationships, like everything else in your life. So really take care of those two and start teaching your players how to really dial those in now. And it doesn't have to take a lot of extra time.
I love that. And I love these conversations because we don't plan it, just whatever needs to come out finds its way. And it found its way. And I'm like so pumped up that we like, you know, like obviously that is so obvious, but I'm glad that we like brought it to the light because I think it's so important. So anything else, Erica, like anything else you want to add, you want to share with coaches before we head out?
I think as far as the physical training, just make it easy. Like start small with the warm up and focusing on all the physical qualities that these girls need, and then just coming back to just setting the culture. Like I know a lot of coaches who I work with and who I mentor, like they set the standard. They're like, hey, you guys, you're doing these twice a week strength workouts at home. We're doing speed work at practice twice a week in the off season. Like this is the standard. This is the culture. We're going to prepare our bodies in the off season so we're ready for the in season. So it also really starts at the top.
Love it. And Erica, for my audience, where can coaches that listen to my stuff, where can they like learn more about you, hire you, all that good stuff?
My website, www.ericasuter.com, and Twitter and Instagram is where I'm triggering people the most.
Yes, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, at Fit Soccer Queen. That's all you need to know. And Shay, how about you?
Yeah. So first off, yes, I love your Twitter because I see, I'm like, oh, people are going to get triggered by this. And I love it. But yeah, so Instagram and Twitter at Shay Haddow as well, website at www.alphagirlconfidence.com, and also the Alpha Girl Confidence podcast, and then Erica, your podcast as well, Soccer Queens podcast. So hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I know I enjoyed it. I'm obviously, you can tell I'm fired up. So thank you, Erica, for the amazing conversation, and we'll see you guys next week.